Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast. I am Jody Grunwald. This week, my guest is Olga Abinader, Director of Environmental Review and Land Use Planning at Matrix New World Engineering. Olga is very proud of working for Matrix, as it is a growing women-owned business with offices in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Arizona, and Louisiana, with project experience throughout the United States and the Caribbean. Olga was born in the Dominican Republic and immigrated with her family to Salem, Massachusetts in the early 1990s. She realized from the beginning that she looked and sounded different. It was difficult and an adjustment in the beginning. However, she took the opportunity of this new world to its full extent and wound up going to Harvard and Brown University. Olga's family spoke only Spanish at home in order to keep strong ties with their Caribbean heritage. She assumed a leadership role in the Union Latina organization established in 1987 at Salem High School to celebrate Latin American culture and traditions. Then in 2007, Hispanic Business, Inc. recognized Olga as a Winner's Circle Scholar at the Hispanic Business Annual Woman of the Year Awards. One thing that is very important to Olga is accessible and servant leadership. She feels that she has a responsibility to lift and mentor others along their journey. We also talk about the balance of being a career-minded woman while being a loving and supportive mom. On March 24th, Today is the Day is launching the inaugural International Changemakers Forum titled Challenge Yourself, Disrupt the Status Quo. Learn more about how you can connect with incredible everyday changemakers, CNN heroes, authors, TEDx speakers, entrepreneurs, and more. To purchase tickets and to learn more, go to todayisthedayliveit.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Today is the Day Changemakers YouTube channel, stream this podcast on all streaming sites, comment, like, and share, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Today is the Day Live It. The views expressed by all Today is the Day Changemakers podcast guests are their own. Their appearance on the Today is the Day Changemakers podcast does not imply any endorsement of them or any entity that they represent. Have a great week, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast. I am Jody Grunwald, and as I say every single week, I get to introduce the most dynamic, inspiring, and wonderful people who are making a difference in their corner of the world and beyond. And today I have Olga Abinader on with me. I said your last name right? Abinader.
Yes, you did.
All right. And that's very important to me. Hi, Olga. How are you today?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me on your show, Jody. This is such a wonderful opportunity. I'm very grateful.
Well, I'm really grateful. And I almost wish we hit record from when we first started chatting just a few minutes ago, because that always happens to me. All the good stuff happens sometimes, not all of it, but a little bit of it happens right before the conversation. I feel like we're fast friends already, Olga.
Me too. Thank you.
You're welcome. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to read a little bit of your bio like I always do. I always say these words are so important because it takes a lot to get them onto the page. And then we're going to chat about your background. So Olga was born in the Dominican Republic, immigrated with her family to Salem, Massachusetts in the early 1990s. Her family maintained strong connections to their Caribbean heritage by speaking only Spanish at home. As a fully bilingual English and Spanish speaker, Olga translated for family and friends who had limited English skills. In 1999, Olga assumed a leadership role in the Union Latina organization established in 1987 at Salem High School to celebrate Latin American culture and traditions. In 2007, Hispanic Business, Inc. recognized Olga as a Winner's Circle Scholar at the Hispanic Business Annual Woman of the Year Awards event. As the former director of the Environmental Assessment and Review Division with the New York City Department of City Planning, Olga led hundreds of active city environmental quality review applications to support transit-oriented growth, housing production and affordability, economic development, and resilient and sustainable communities across New York City. She works for a company called Matrix New World Engineering. Matrix New World Engineering is a company of engineering and science experts who focus on some of the nation's most pressing long-term challenges, including climate change, resiliency, ecological restoration, contamination studies, water supply, disaster response, and urban revitalization. Wow, Olga.
Yes.
That's awesome. And we're going to talk about this because this is a woman-owned, run business, and we'll get to that next.
Yes, it is.
So I'm super excited about that. And lastly, I will mention, because I think this is important, I don't want to forget, that the organization has offices in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Arizona, and Louisiana, coupled with project experience throughout the United States and the Caribbean. So I hope I got that all right, Olga.
You did. Excellent job. Thank you.
So I'll ask you what I ask everybody because I think it's so important is, so how did it feel to hear the part of that I read about you, how did it feel to hear it?
I felt really good about it. I feel like I'm making my family proud, like I'm making my grandmother proud, who was my hero growing up. And it's something, it's humbling. And at the same time, I just want to keep going. I want to move forward and I want to continue to create that bio and expand it.
That's amazing. And so you were born in the Dominican Republic, and how long did you live there for?
I lived there until I was 7 years old.
Okay, so can you tell us, remember something that really stands out about living there that you could share with us?
Oh, there's so many things. The warm weather, the warmth of the people, the beauty of just being in a Caribbean country where everything is about community and about closeness. I mean, there's so many things, it's hard to really just define in a single interview even, but I just remember the warmth all around, from the weather to the people.
It's very interesting. I've been thinking a lot about this, about cultures, right? And the fact of the matter is like you've described it, and I've heard it many times described this way, the warmth of the people.
Yes.
But yeah, when I talk to people here, born and raised here, we don't always hear that. So tell me what you mean by the warmth of the people.
Well, I think there's no such thing as personal space when it comes to Latin culture, and especially the Caribbean culture. Everyone knows everyone's story. Everyone knows about kind of what your path is, about your family, about who you are and your ancestry. And I think it's all about just kind of feeling like family. And, there's some, just this wonderful kind of open door policy where just, again, everyone just feels like family. And I must say, coming to the United States for the first time when I was 7 years old, it was the middle of winter, I remember very well. I saw snow for the first time, which was amazing. And just feeling like, wow, there's this new opportunity. This is the land of opportunity. My parents have talked it up. We're excited about being in the United States. But I also felt a sense of loss of that warmth in that community, because I very much felt like I had been displaced and I was a bit of a stranger in a strange land with a new language, a new culture, and just, so many new things. And I had to, just kind of adjust and adapt. But yeah, I mean, when I think about Dominican Republic and I think about the people and the warmth, I think about just everyone feeling like family, even though you may not necessarily know them, firsthand. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's what it is.
So coming here, as you said, it was a little bit of loss, and that's not the first time I've heard this in interviews, is that feeling of loss and that feeling of connection. And everybody says they're coming here for more opportunity, right? A better life. But pieces of that better life, and then there are pieces that aren't as good as where you may come from, right? So so how did you deal with that loss?
Yes, I mean, I think just working to build a new community and to just embrace what was offered to me as a young girl in the United States. So I relied a lot on my parents. I talked to them a lot about what the change was. We actually moved into a very small apartment. We were a family of 5 with my grandmother, who had been living in the United States already. And to me, just recuperating kind of that Dominicanness meant getting closer to my grandmother, who I didn't know very well until we moved in with her in her small apartment. So there were 6 of us, and just retaining the language, always, just asking questions and trying to figure out how, just embracing all of the things that came with moving to a new country and being in a new space. But to me, just like trying to rebuild that community and being close with my parents and close with my maternal grandmother, it made a big difference in adapting to some tremendous change.
Did you live in a community where people look like you, or did you feel like they didn't?
Not at all. We moved to a suburb of Boston, Massachusetts, and no one looked like me. No one spoke like me. And even, going into the school for the first time and seeing that I was different, it was really the first time that I noticed that, hey, I'm in a different place. I don't quite fit in here. So it was hard. It was a big challenge for me, for sure. But what I'll tell you is that I really didn't take for granted that I felt like I had lost something, but there was also this excitement about being in this new place and looking to a future that maybe wasn't available to me in my home country. And this is something that was ingrained to be my parents and my grandmother most of all.
Well, as we go through your journey, we will really see how you took that opportunity all the way, and it's truly incredible. On March 24th, today is the day is launching the inaugural Challenge Yourself, Disrupt the Status Quo International Virtual Changemakers Forum. This unprecedented event provides attendees with the opportunity to personally connect with fellow everyday changemakers, CNN heroes, TEDx speakers, CEOs, entrepreneurs, authors, and more. The event's keynote speaker is known as the Global Ambassador for Changemakers, Henry DeCio Jr. Your ticket purchase matters, as 20% of the proceeds will go to the Applaud Our Kids Foundation. Thank you to Investors Bank, Catalyst for Change sponsor, Create Change, Disrupt the Status Quo, Ignite Your Spark breakout session sponsor, Pam 10. Scholarship sponsor, New Jersey Business and Industry Association. Special mention to all the Inspire Change sponsors. Go to todayisthedayliveit.com. Let's talk about what you wanted to be when you grew up. As you were here, this opportunity, what did you think was going to happen as you were going through school?
I have always wanted to be an architect and an artist. To me, home is something that's super important, home and community. So when I was growing up, I loved the arts. I loved architecture. I loved the idea of drawing a home and creating a home. So that was my goal. And as I was in the United States again, just embracing this new culture and this new experience, I was always thinking about how to create that new home, how to create that new community, given what, my family and I had sacrificed in order to come to the States. So to me, architecture and art have always been a part of who I am.
So then you went to school, and growing up, it says you went to Harvard and Brown University.
Correct. So
incredible.
That's correct.
So please, share about that journey, because like you said, like I just recently said, that you really took the opportunity all the way.
So when we were, talking about coming to the United States, something that my father always told me was that America is a place of opportunity. America is a place that has the greatest educational institutions in the world. We are making a sacrifice. We're losing our home. We're, moving to this new place, but it's because we know that you're going to be able to thrive. The three, myself and my sister and my younger brother, we want you to have these opportunities. So we're going to move to this place. It's called Boston, outside of Boston. And you should know that these opportunities are available to you for you to just go to some of the best schools. So we want you to work hard. We want you to work hard, and we know that you are capable. And that lesson, of there's an opportunity here. My, parents told me that they had sacrificed a lot. I felt that they had sacrificed a lot. And I felt that, I didn't want to squander that. So growing up, as I was, going to school, I always kept in mind that education was why my parents had brought me here, and then had to excel at that, because that was going to be the path of creating the goals, the ideal life for myself, and really bringing back that notion of home, creating this new home. So for me, education was number one. And no, I didn't know that I was going to end up at Brown University, getting a degree from a wonderful Ivy League institution. I did not know that I was going to end up at Harvard University to do my master's. I just knew that I wanted to grow, that I wanted to succeed, and that my parents had given up a lot in order to get me and my siblings to where we were in the United States. So my path was about just looking at how to excel in academics, because that was going to be my legacy moving forward.
So what did you get your degrees?
So I started off in architectural studies, and I was really interested in kind of, again, understanding the history of architecture, the history of art. Again, those had been my passion since I was a very little girl. And I also explored at the same time urban studies, which was about community, which is about building communities and working through how communities grow and how they grow intelligently, and how all of the infrastructure and services that a community needs need to be incorporated into your thinking. So it's not just about architecture and having that home, but about that neighborhood and about that experience surrounding that home. So I got really excited about architecture and urban studies and eventually urban planning through my experience academically at Brown.
Amazing. And I wish I had that in me. That's a lot of mathematics, which is way above. But that's wonderful, because it is such a, still to this day, unless you tell me differently, it seems as if it's still a very male dominated industry.
The field of architecture and now the field of planning and engineering, it's especially engineering, can be very male dominated. It can be very daunting as a woman to explore that and feel like you really fit in. So you're right. Yeah, especially what I'm doing now, it's very male dominated.
What about diversity in that field?
Yes, diversity. My experience has been always that I've felt like I'm one of the few people who look like me, who sound like me, who, English is a second language, and, who have kind of my background. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of work to be done in bringing diversity into this, especially now the kind of planning and engineering space that I'm in.
Right. So what would you suggest is something that's missing right now? Bring more diversity in.
I think that, and I think that people are getting better about this and companies are getting better about this, but there's really an opportunity for people like me who come from an immigrant background, woman of color, English is a second language, to just get out there, to go to different events, to go to, next week, I'm going to be participating in, like one of these college recruiting opportunities. Just really going out there to where these, young generations are. I think just being there, having them see that I'm like them, they're like me, and that if I was able to open doors for myself through the help of others, of course, that maybe that's something that can inspire them, that they can see that someone who's like them is in a certain position, in a certain company or in a certain career, and, that the door's open for them. So I think representation is really important. Seeing someone who is similar to you in some way, who you can identify with, can really just make it a little easier to help you envision yourself in that role or in that career.
Was there a leader, somebody in leadership that you followed, that you looked up to as you were moving through your schooling and even today? Can't talk today. To today.
Yes. Well, I'll have to tell you this, there were people who were not in leadership positions that inspired me to begin with. I keep going back to my maternal grandmother. We moved in with her when we first came to the United States. She didn't have an education. She had barely an elementary school education, and she came to the United States. She worked at a small factory. I believe it was a Delta factory, with doing piecework. And, to me, she demonstrated to me the value of hard work, the dignity in any type of work that you do. And she taught me how to just do things well and excel no matter what. So that was the first inspiration. That was the first role model for me, just seeing my grandmother. And as I expanded, my academic studies and, went through higher learning and then started getting jobs, I did find myself admiring women of color who had experienced a lot of success in their careers, and just seeing them in their positions, knowing that they were there, it was really comforting to me. It was inspirational. It told me that, hey, maybe there's a path here. Maybe this is not just for a certain person who looks a certain way, but maybe there's opportunity for all of us.
So what would you tell someone, someone who may be listening, and I have listeners of all ages. Actually, it's funny, I have young, and then we go into like middle age. So it's very funny how the demographics of who listens. What do you tell someone who hears Harvard, who hears Brown, and they may not have this, they may not have the grades, they may not have the funding in order to do that, and they're not even really sure where to begin, and they don't feel like they can make it? What would you say to them as they listen to you going to these incredible places and wanting to be like you?
First, I would tell them to surround themselves with people who have inspired them, with mentors, with a community of people who maybe haven't necessarily accomplished Harvard and Brown, but they have accomplished something in their lives. Talk to them, ask them, how did you get to this point? Really just getting that advice, getting that mentorship, getting that support, I think is very critical in the very beginning. Because when you're young, when you're getting started, or when you just, feel like you haven't had that guidance, it can be a very daunting experience. So surround yourself with a community of either colleagues or peers or mentors who can help you get to that level, who can tell you their story and who will embrace you with open arms and kind of be accessible to you in a way that they can hear you out and they can support you. And then after that, start visioning your goal. Is your goal to go to an excellent private institution? Is it to go to an excellent private institution? Is it to forego, academics altogether and start your business? Start to envision that goal. And then consider this, and this is something my father tells me all of the time. It doesn't take a genius to go to Harvard. It doesn't take a genius to go to Brown. It doesn't take a genius to be a successful entrepreneur. It takes, as Tom Edison said, my father tells me all the time, 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. So you're going to set that goal after you've established your community that has inspired you, will support you. You're going to write out that goal, and you're going to take that goal and divide it up into small individual steps. And you're going to, again, the inspiration came from your mentors, but now it's time for the perspiration. Every day, even if it's 10 minutes a day, you're going to work toward your goal. You're going to discipline yourself. You're going to make sure to hold yourself accountable, and you're going to work at it every single day. And it is these small decisions to work at it every single day that will eventually lead to big results. So that is the advice that I would give my best friends. It's the advice that I would give my son. It's the advice that I would give, people who are further in their lives and want to start something new. And it's the advice that was handed to me and that I appreciate every day.
That is great advice. And I say that all the time. There's also something I also say is if you have one person that believes in you, even more than you believe in yourself, because you're in that self-doubt space, they can help you launch. So connection, you said it before, connection and connecting with like-minded people who are already there, who can give you those words of encouragement, or even another, someone that can help you along the way. They can be the catalyst. Doesn't mean that they're the right person that can help you. So all about everything, my whole platform is about connection. So I appreciate that. 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. Very interesting. I like that.
Right.
Great mantra.
Eli Manning, former New York Giants quarterback.
Leading a team, you learn pretty fast. You're only as good as the people who have your back. Lately, my goals are more focused on business, and having Investors Bank as my banking partner feels the same way. They have my back too. They're there for me with the resources and online tools I need for whatever success lies ahead. For what I do now and what I'll do next, I count on Investors Bank.
Visit investorsbank.com or stop by a branch. Member FDIC.
So, there is a statistic, and I'm reading right now, which I hate to do it, but I want to get the statistic right, that Latina mothers make up 62.8% of the workforce, yet there is a disconnect between working and advancing, as well as working and being kept in lower wage jobs. This is something we all know that needs to change. How do you think we can go about really, we have the conversation, but that's great. We need to have action and movement, and we have to change. What advice do you have in order to make that happen?
I never can say that I have the full 100% solution to this. I think there's a lot there that needs to be unpacked and that we need to consider from a legislation perspective, from a community perspective. But what I would say first is just having the data, understanding that this is a reality. I've seen that metric, I've seen, similar metrics, and it just shocked me. So just bringing awareness about these Latinas, working mothers who are heavily underpaid, I think is important. First, raising that awareness. And I would say too, that there are, so many of us who have, broken those barriers. And I think there's a responsibility on us to continue to raise that awareness and to connect with the right change makers in order to, find a way to bring us out of this pattern. And the way that we're going to do that is through a variety of ways. Politics, I think changing the way that we think about how to support through that kind of bottom top down approach, but also education and mentorship, right? As a company, my company is a woman-owned company. we can create mentorship programs where we can tap into that local workforce and we can hire them at the level that they're at. We can create paths to education that can bring them to the next level. And, I think everyone can do their part, but it really starts with understanding what the issue is, bringing it to light, creating awareness, and then bringing together a community of leaders that are accessible, that are approachable, and that care, so that we can change this reality and really just improve that metric.
Absolutely. And what you said before, going out and being visible as a leader, if you're in that leadership position and you know that you didn't see people that look like you as you were growing up, now there's that next generation that's looking for that. And if you are that person, being that and setting that example and being there to support them is so important. On the other hand, we as an entire society need to not just have conversation, because I know there's a lot of that. We need to make sustainable change. This is, and we need to move from conversation to action.
Correct.
So that, but I'm glad we're talking. And it's just very important to me that we do a lot of times, especially as this in business, we have meetings for our meetings, right? Don't we?
Yes.
So, I see some great organizations making some great change. And speaking of organizations, as we've said and mentioned a few times now, is that your organization Matrix is woman run, woman owned. And so before we even get into that, what is your title there? I don't think we shared that yet.
Yes, my title is Director of Environmental Review and Land Use Planning.
Yes, say that 3 times fast. That's great.
It's hard for me to say. It's a long title. Environmental Review and Land Use Planning Director. So what I do is I'm a consultant and I support people who are navigating the New York City, especially the New York City regulatory and land use process. So I've always wanted to help people. I started my career in the public sector because that was, part of the goal, especially given my background. And once I was ready to move on to the private sector, I was really excited to work for, again, a woman-owned company, a company that promotes entrepreneurship and ideas and challenging yourself to grow. Again, that 99% inspiration, 1% inspiration approach. So what I do now from that consulting perspective is help people navigate an otherwise very difficult and lengthy process.
When you said that you do that in New York City, it just sounds like somewhat of a little bit of a nightmare, considering all just how crowded it possibly is in New York City. I can imagine that there's a lot of red tape and things as you're looking to use land and rebuild and all of those things. So I give you a lot of credit. I'm sure that takes a lot of time, energy, and patience. I would say patience probably maybe more.
Agree.
Oh my goodness. So tell us about Matrix as an overall organization, because you're located in multiple areas, and a little bit more about the work of the organization.
Sure. I would like to say that the bottom line of Matrix is that we are problem solvers. We want to understand our clients' problems before they even know what they are, and just identify ways of just navigating anything that they need to resolve and taking care of that. But we're an engineering firm, we're an environmental planning firm, we're a consulting firm, and we work in a variety of different spaces. Offshore wind is a really important practice that we have that's grown very quickly in the last couple of years. Environmental impact statements and environmental assessment statements, that's part of my practice and the practice of some of my colleagues as well. And engineering, ecological wetlands work, delineation. I mean, there's just so much that we do. It's hard to say it all kind of in one place, but it's an incredible company, kind of a Swiss Army knife of excellent professionals who are here to problem solve. And some of the most exciting work that I've come to appreciate that Matrix does is if there's a disaster, like if there disaster response during the several years ago in the Gulf Coast, when there was that oil spill, BP oil spill, Matrix was one of the first companies to raise their hand and say, look, we can bring people out there and start cleaning up on Monday. Just let us know how to get started. So Matrix is there. If there is a need, we will be there. So that's in a nutshell, Matrix.
That's and that makes sense then why you know, as a change maker, why you want to be part of that. They're creating and helping and making change through the work that they're doing there. You know, you mentioned that you have a 4-year-old, and we started our conversation off a little bit before about the balance,
Mhm.
you know, and we have a forum that we run once a year, and one of the topics is the balance between making a living and making a life, right? And
So important.
it is so hard. And people hate the term now work-life balance, because let's face it, the only way you can have that is if you create it. So tell us a little bit about, how do you create balance in your
You're making an assumption that I've created balance.
life?
I'm not sure that I've quite done that.
Okay.
I think, you know, there's a great mentor who I have now while at Matrix who told me that it's not so much about balance, because balance can sometimes be a myth. It's about having that right blend, about knowing that some weeks you're going to be a little bit more focused on one side, perhaps the family side. Other weeks you're going to be more focused on the professional side. And then working with a company that provides you with the flexibility to grow professionally, while also understanding that life also often comes first. So I think having that flexibility, understanding that there's no such thing as perfect work-life balance. And also for me personally, I have an amazing husband who has been extremely supportive in my transition from public sector work to private sector work. So I don't do it alone. I don't do this alone. I have a community. I have a husband who's incredible, who helps me with childcare duties when I have to work those late hours or going back to that conference for 4 days. Someone who I can trust, someone who has lifted me up when things have been very challenging in the workforce, so that I could just focus on one thing at a time. So I would say maybe, you know, every family structure is different, but maybe you have your mother, maybe you have a friend, maybe you have someone else who can support you. Don't try to do it alone. Find your community, support each other, and know that there's no such thing as perfection. And the balance, work-life balance, to me, at least, it's a myth. It's a myth. And I think having to embrace that reality is part of what's important.
Yeah, we talked a little before the interview about the mother's guilt, right? That, or
Yes,
I should just say parent guilt, because it can be mothers or fathers.
correct.
You know, it's very true, you know, because if you spend time during work hours doing something for your child, you see the text messages or emails coming in on your phone, and then you've got that side. The other side, you miss a party. I mean, my daughter remembers the 2nd grade party I missed because I had to work. And so, you know that the guilt comes from both sides. And so it's hard to let yourself off the hook. You're only one person doing the best that you can. But we talked before about the example that we were setting, right? And how you and I had that in common, the nurturing mother and the working professional father. Can you talk a little bit about what we were chatting about before, and how that set us up for where we are today?
Yes, absolutely. I personally do feel a lot of guilt sometimes, because I am very career focused, and I find that takes a lot of my time and a lot of my energy, especially having transitioned to a new role and a leadership role. So one of the things that I try and remember, and this advice came from 2 of my closest friends who I met in high school, and we're still very close. And they said, listen, we understand that there's guilt that comes with not spending every minute of your time with your child. But as a professional working mother, you have to know that your child, it has someone who he can admire, who has someone who he can look up to say, that's my mother. She loves me, she takes care of me, but she's also focused in expanding her career. And because of that, I have an example of a mother. So to me, that is the driving force that, you know, despite the guilt, and I admit it is still there every moment of the day, it keeps me going, just knowing that I'm still doing this for my child.
My kids are way older, and I have to say, you know, I felt that guilt all the time. And now I see pieces of what I had done and the work ethic that I had in them, because they had to see that all the time. And I worked a lot, 60, 80-hour weeks, and definitely moved up the ranks. And just like you, that guilt was there. But I could say, because you have a 4-year-old, mine are 20 and 23, and I definitely can tell you at the other end of that, it's somehow, I mean, my kids were making their own lunch in 4th and 5th grade because, you know, I just didn't have time, but they actually learned how to pack the lunch and take what they liked instead of throwing in the yogurt that they never ate and then threw away and during lunch, you know? So we learn as we go. And, you know, I don't know where that guilt comes from because we're not born with feeling guilt. It's an emotion we learn. So we learn guilt as time goes on. So
Maybe it's like a maternal thing. I'm not sure, but it's there. It's very real.
it is. So there's
Moms out there. Yes, we're in this together.
I love that. We are in this together and letting ourselves off the hook. And when if you find the magic bullet of how to do that, Olga, let's all know. Pam 10 is a leader in IT enterprise solutions and staffing. They are driven to transform their clients' business performances. They do this every day by providing their clients with the best services and products. Products like BizLego, an online community platform, and Colear, a unique learning management system. They also transform the lives of women and children through their associated nonprofits, SheTech, which supports women in and joining the technology field, and Softkin, support organization for kids in need. Pam 10, technology for social good. Go to pam10.com for more information. I want to go back to something you said before because I didn't bring it up, and I think it's important. Is that you talk about working in the public sector and then the private sector.
Yes,
and I really want to touch on that. Talk to us about the work that you did in the public sector, and then kind of tell us which are the things that you liked better in both of those areas, or best in both of those areas.
what I loved about the public sector first was that the bottom line is not necessarily about making a profit. It is about helping other people. In urban planning, which is my field, and environmental planning, you're thinking about how to make sure that when New York City, I was in New York City, when New York City grows, the population increases, that the communities that are there, the neighborhoods that are there are set up for that kind of population increase that is anticipated, that the schools have sufficient seats, that the infrastructure is set up so that you have sufficient space to get into the subway and have a way to get to work every day, that the parks are in good shape and that they're able to accommodate your little children running around. So I loved being part of the public sector and just knowing that my work was noble and was there at the end of the day to just help other people and to help New York City become an amazing place to live and grow and work and play. So to me, that was one of the best parts of city work. Now, transitioning to private sector work, which I think is where this question is headed. What do I like about this? In the public sector, I knew my mission. I knew that I wanted to help people, and I got to do a lot of that through my work. But there was still a part of me that, even though I had a wonderful, successful career in public sector, there's part of me that still wanted to explore this other side that was inspired by my father, and that is entrepreneurship. That is taking something that I know how to do and using that in order to create a business, to create a service line, to create, hopefully someday, my own company. So moving to the private sector was a very difficult decision for me, and it was a personal one. And it came up during the pandemic. But to me, I was only looking for a company that was equally inspirational. And to me, Matrix is a company that lets me live my true self as an entrepreneur and someone looking to grow a practice, to grow a team, to provide a service. So that's what I like about the private sector in many ways.
That's great. So what would you tell somebody that is starting out in this field, in the field that you're in right now? What advice do you have for that person?
The advice that I have is that it is a marathon. It is not a sprint. To give themselves time and grace and space to really just think about that this is going to be a journey and that you're not going to feel like it's successful on day one. You're going to hit some moments where you feel like you're questioning yourself, your abilities. It is a challenge, but do not let that stop you. Let the challenges and the failures, and we all have them. I have plenty of them. Those are opportunities for growth. Those are opportunities for learning. And no matter what happens, wake up the next day and start fresh, and you're going to succeed.
No, Olga, I think that advice is for anybody, anywhere, because it really is beautiful, and it fits no matter where you are in your career. So that was wonderful and off the cuff. So, I a total off the cuff question. So thank you for that. And, I have this thing that I read this thing from Brene Brown, if you know who Brene Brown is. And she wrote this thing about, we don't fail, we fall. And I've been on a mission to talk about that, because that's the same thing as the guilt. I mean, I almost feel like we need another word for the guilt to try to get through that. And I don't have that one yet, but the failure and falling as babies, as your son is just, a couple of years older than that, they fall and they get back up. And they don't even remember. They just kind of go,
Exactly.
They don't even think about the fact that, wait, I fell 2 weeks ago and skinned my knee and now it's all better. They just move on with their life. And so we need to borrow some of those things from our childhood and pull them forward, because I think that is a really good point. Failure is falling, and we get back up and we try again. That's all we can do.
That's exactly right. And that's a mantra that I live by every day.
So what's your definition of a change maker?
That's a really excellent question that I hadn't really considered before. I think a change maker is someone who, like we said, falls down, stands back up, keeps going. And even though they don't have all of the answers, they don't have everything resolved, they're just going to pursue their goals and they're going to pursue their dreams. And at some point, after doing that little bit each day, even with the failures, getting up, starting over again, continuing to fight their fight, they accomplish something great. They accomplish something different. They accomplish something new. And you know what? By doing that, they uncover that they are a change maker and that they have transformed something magically without even realizing it. And someone else can then see that and know that they can accomplish it too.
Are you sure you haven't thought about that before? That came out very naturally to you.
I just really life experience more than anything else.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything, before we ask the last question, is there anything that you want to share? Any last words of wisdom that you want to portray to the listeners today?
I think that to those of you who are in a leadership position, to those of you who have traversed a lot of challenges and have overcome a lot, if you're a leader, become an accessible leader, someone who the next generation can speak with, can see as a mentor. Remember that as a leader, you have the responsibility to lift other people. It's not just about your success, but you have a responsibility to help others. So my advice would be to anyone who is in a similar position, who has accomplished something even small, just know that it's also your responsibility to help others get to where you are. And through that, you're going to achieve excellence and you're going to be proud of that path that you've taken.
So insightful. Oh my goodness. You have to, I think you should write a book. You have all these wonderful insight and learnings that, so much that you can teach. So thank you for sharing that with us today. So my last question that I ask everybody this year is, what is the footprint you're creating right now that you want to leave behind?
The footprint that I'm creating, or that I hope to create, is this notion of accessible leadership and servant leadership. Just like I said, my responsibility is not just to succeed myself, but to lift others. That's the footprint that I want to leave behind.
Wow. Well, you are definitely, I'm lifted up just from listening to all of your great insights. So thank you for that. That was great.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Well, how can people find information out about Matrix?
Yes, we have a website, mnwe.com, and you can find us on LinkedIn as well, Matrix New World Engineering.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Olga. It was great chatting with you today. I really appreciate it. And please, everybody go check out Matrix website, and you can find Olga as well out, I'm sure, on LinkedIn and all those fun places. And so thanks again. And I'm going to say what I always say at the end of every podcast. Bye, Olga. It's so great. It was so great to meet you. Today is the day. You cannot go back to yesterday, and you cannot, oh my goodness, Today is the day you cannot go back to yesterday, and you do not yet own tomorrow. So what steps, small or large, are you taking today to get yourself closer to your goals? You see, sometimes you make a mistake when you're saying things, and you just pick yourself back up and you keep going. See, that was a perfect example of that. So everybody have a fabulous week. We'll see you next week. Bye. Bye, Olga. Thanks again.